¡Empezamos!
Bienvenidos a otro episodio más. We are so happy that you're joining us today on a live special episode of Empodérate de Chicanos por la Causa. We are thrilled to have in our studios a very special friend and a dear friend to Chicanos por la Causa, a very special guest and a dear friend to Chicanos por la Causa, Olivia Fierro. Welcome, Olivia.
Thank you so much.
Happy, Olivia, to have you here today.
Lo siento mucho. No puedo hablar español. We don't want to have it. It'll be a mess. So thank you so much. She goes, oh, no, we do them in English sometime. I'm looking at your videos. You don't.
No, we do.
So, but thank you for pretending you do.
We have done many of them. But, we're thrilled to have you, Olivia.
Thank you.
The award-winning journalist, MC, media coach, business owner, mom, and wife. But before we get to all that, let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
So Whittier, California, tell me all about that.
That's right. Okay, so I'm hoping that a lot of people who know CPLC know Whittier, right? I was actually doing
absolutely. California. It's all about Southern California,
I was doing an Instagram reel, and I was like, I got to look up something. I put in Whittier even to look for the music, and there's so many songs about Whittier Boulevard and life in Whittier. Right? It's hilarious. Yeah, it's kind of a lowrider culture. It's 78% Latino. Like I just checked that the other day because my husband is like, wow, it is. I grew up where the minority is the majority, and that's, kind of we're all brown faces everywhere. So that's where I grew up. My parents still live in the house where I grew up. There's 3 of us kids, and my aunt and cousins were around the corner, and it was, it's home. I was just there and kind of coming and looking for our product out at the liquor stores in our hometown, and it was just kind of a big deal to me to be able to see the town and the businesses from a different perspective and kind of be back as a business person. So it was a great place to grow up, and I still have many, many friends and a lot of love for everything there in Uptown Whittier is what we call it. We don't call it downtown, it's uptown.
So Alicia, our president and CEO, Alicia Nunez is from Lincoln Heights.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so she was telling us about her growing up in California. That's a little different than certainly here in Arizona, and how, there is a certain spaces where there is a lot of bubble on how, certain, like you were saying, there is a particularity for each neighborhood.
Absolutely. Yes. And I mean, Whittier's origin story, I remember being in this bicentennial celebration or something when I was a little kid, and you're wearing like some kind of Quaker dress. It was like a Quaker town, but really, it really switched over. So I was questioning myself of, gosh, really is predominantly Latino community still. And I looked up on the census and I was like, yeah, sure. It's not my imagination. It's 78%. So no wonder we have such good Mexican food. But, both of my parents are Mexican Americans. They're first generation. And we're, I think, probably a very familiar story, to a lot of people in this community, which is that kind of hybrid of You're a first generation, but you're kind of a second generation. My mom is one of 12 kids, and she was always saying, well, I don't remember which ones were born in Mexico and who was born in the U.S. And they went back and forth as migrant farmers. So she was born in Idaho, but has almost, no recollection. She remembers living in Park City, Utah for a short time. And then she really grew up a big chunk of her childhood in Durango, Mexico, on a farm there.
Right.
And
Veronica
so, she has her most happy childhood memories from that time, making her own butter and her mom making her own tortillas and all of that, and grew up only speaking Spanish. And then they left and have a, very dramatic, Lifetime movie worthy, story of coming in and connecting with her older siblings who were living in the States. And that's when she started to live in Oxnard, California. So the 3 youngest daughters were all then moved there with their mother, and the girls did not speak one word of English. And so they went to school, and they said, it was really hard because they didn't know how to communicate, and they weren't allowed to speak Spanish to each other. And then her mother never learned English, so she didn't want to hear them speaking English at home. So she said for years, and it's kind of funny that I went into communications, she said, for years, I just felt like I just had to be quiet. I didn't know, I didn't know. Yeah. I never felt right about talking because I never felt confident either way, you know, and I didn't know how to, the right thing. And then my father grew up in East Los Angeles. He was born in Boyle Heights. And for some reason, my late dad kept him out of school until I want to say the first grade. And he grew up speaking Spanish. And then I think he grew up more speaking more English than my mother did. And later on in high school, and I know there's more to this story that he just won't tell, but they sent him to Ciudad Juarez for high school. And he lived with a family that they were not related. And that's where he went to high school. And I guess that was to improve his Spanish. But it, was a kind of a derailment because I think he was academically gifted and probably would have been on maybe a college track had he been here. And so it was just so it's just kind of that life of, you're kind of walking the line of two communities all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Both of your parents had that similar experience, that living part in Mexico and then part here, and trying to figure out their lives on both sides every time they will migrate.
Exactly. And it was, I didn't understand the kind of some of the decisions until I think much later. And we actually was part of a Latin American Studies course when I went to UCLA, but kind of of that generation in particular, but the age of my parents, that then they just went all in on assimilation. And so raising us, we spoke no Spanish.
Well, they would hear them in school. Like
exactly.
They did.
So
there was no choice but to survive and look a way that you understand that the European, you make sure that you let others understand that you were part of the same group. And your identity and your culture was just on the second side.
So it's only now that, we really, number one, understand, I mean, even brain development and stuff, there's no greater gift than growing up bilingual.
Right.
And so it's just, but the only time that I would hear them speak Spanish in the home would be when they were talking about us. So, she'd be speaking and say, Olivia, that's Michelle, Adam, and you're like, oh no, what? And so it just wasn't. And like 16 cousins on my dad's side, it's all the same. Everybody was raised the same way. We all have regret about not growing up in that immersive language household, of course, take it in school and.
Yeah. But, we share our culture in so many other ways than just our language. So I think there is...
Mainly the food.
Right?
Mainly the food.
You get there first.
How into your business your parents are, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So is there any particular memory that you had growing up there in Southern California with your parents that looking back, you feel that it defined you? Is it...
everything. It is... so much change happened generation to generation. My parents were, they worked hard. We had what we needed. My mom worked at a department store and my dad ran a loan office. They never, and I think I mentioned this in one of our CPLC events, especially when we talk about the Esperanza Awards and celebrating education, about at one point asking my mom, well, why didn't you go to college? And she literally said, I didn't even know Mexicans could go to college. I mean, that's just, it was not on their radar at all. And then, they made such a commitment to having that be part of what our life expectation was. That was always something that was talked about. We would all be going to college. What would we be doing? What opportunities could we create, to kind of dream big. And my brother is a professional writer. He works in Hollywood. And my sister has an MFA. She's a professional artist. And, I went into journalism and communications. And it just is very inspiring. And, I think you don't process it as you're a kid growing up, but just that they really set a standard and created, space for us to grow into whoever we could become and had that support and, weren't told like that's out of reach for us, even though they grew up thinking that so much was out of reach for them.
Exactly, right? It's about looking forward to the next generation. If I'm making some sacrifices, so I felt that I didn't live up to the expectations that maybe others have around me, after realizing that there were access to any possible resources to look at education as the equalizer that we all
It
need.
is, as we all know. And I just, I think sometimes I have this goofy picture of myself when I ran for office. I think it was, I always ran for office. So, but I think I'd run for class president in freshman year, and my dad sent me flowers. And it was the first time that I got like flowers actually delivered to the house. And it was, a win, lose, or draw, you win for running. And I just always was encouraged to put myself out there, to try, to not be afraid, to make a fool of myself. I remember in high school, somehow, I was always in student government. I started our own newspaper in elementary school.
See, you were a leader from the start.
Yeah, I always tried things, and I was in plays and cheerleading and just all the stuff. And debate, I did a debate competition in San Diego, I remember. But I even ended up in this musical, and I have the worst singing voice in the world, like the worst. And it was supposed to be dancers, and it was, I'm thinking Damn Yankees or something like that. One of those old musicals. And
or
it starts
Footloose.
practically. And it starts with 4 wives singing. And those were the parts that we tried out that were called dancers. None of us could sing. And it's the first part of the show. And I'm like, oh my God.
Act.
Oh, it's horrible. And the teacher told me we were practicing and he would sing something. I would sing it back. And he's like, don't you hear the difference? And I'm like, I do not. I do not. He's like, you're tone deaf. Okay. Well,
I just know I'm good.
This is terrible timing because this show's on in like 3 days. So all I did was, I'm just going to be loud and screw it. I know I can't sing, so what? And I just remember seeing my friends laughing and dying in the seats in the front. And then I remember seeing my mom and asking her afterwards, I was like, well, what did you think? And she goes, well, I could hear you. You know what I mean? So they always kept it real, and they were, very into making sure everybody's grounded. They're not going to give you any, false compliments. That does not happen in the house that I grew up in. But it was just hilarious. It's like, so I think that helped me to be willing to take chances and to laugh at myself, and things go wrong and you can't be good at everything. And sometimes you feel like you're good at nothing, but you can still try,
So by the time you moved to Texas on your first job as a journalist, you were all set. I can do live.
Oh, no,
and I can ad lib. Not a problem.
No. I moved. That was a very dramatic time in my life. Let me just say that, because I had never lived outside of LA County. I had always been driving distance to my parents. I'd always lived with my friends. So it was really a lot of change all at once. I felt far away. Felt very lonely. Culturally, very different. So, there's a lot of Texas that feels like LA or Arizona. That's very Latino.
Or its own country.
Right. Exactly. Amarillo, Texas is not like that. It's the panhandle. It's more like, Oklahoma, say.
Right.
And so I didn't know anybody. And then I also didn't know how to do the job yet. So I went to college and I was a women's studies and history major. And I had learned how to write news at the Fox 11 station in Los Angeles, but I had never reported. And so I was overwhelmed with trying to figure out how to do this. We were editing our own stuff. I mean, things were very different. These were tapes that get caught in these machines, and you pull them out, and you're like crying because you're trying to figure out how to do everything on this very intense deadline. And the first time that I did a live report, I bombed it so horrifically. It was not digital, so things are timed very specifically. So you're thinking of what we would say in the business, your roll cue. You're standing out there, and then once I say, they fell in the lake, the station knows to hit the video, and then you've got 14 seconds to talk over, and then you're going to say this, and they're going to play the soundbite. So I just was so worried about just trying to think of the first couple words to say. I got them out, and then I was like, and then I just stopped talking.
You froze.
Oh, I froze like,
oh my God,
in the worst way. So then it's like a car pileup. It's like one thing after the other goes wrong and wrong and wrong. So then the video is going. Then all of a sudden they say, talk. when I finally start talking, I'm talking over the sound
video
on tape. So then nothing is understood. It's a disaster. And it was a serious story and it was terrible. So we were a good drive back to the station. And I mean, I'm crying about this. I've given up my whole life to come out here. And I think inherently, somewhere deep inside, I just felt like I'd be good at it right away, which was very unrealistic. So
well, you had experience in the top market.
Yeah, but it was just I just didn't think it through, and which is a good thing, or probably I would have been too afraid to go. But
exactly.
I had some kind of arrogance where I thought I would just click. Like when I took guitar lessons, which I quit in like a month, I was like, oh, I'm not good at this. It's very hard to learn new things. And I just was.
I bought a guitar and it's still there.
It's there. It's so pretty. It'd be so cool. It'd be so cool if I could just whip this out.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a long way from there to there. But I called a mentor of mine, a woman who had been on the air for many, many years in Los Angeles. And I told her, oh my God, you're never going to believe what I did. And she's like, oh God, my first one was worse than that. Here. She goes, everybody has these stories. Stop worrying about it. You're going to get to the station. They're going to say, no big deal. It happens. Try again tomorrow. And I said, okay, are you sure? Okay. I get back to the station and my boss calls me into the office and I'm thinking that I'm going to get that chat. Shake it off, get back out there. I get the opposite. She says, that was the worst live report I've ever seen in my entire career. And I'm the worst? The worst of all the worst? The worst. And so she said, I really see you having almost no potential in this business.
Boy, was she wrong.
And you were basically, I was grounded from live reporting. So I didn't even get a chance to do it over again for another maybe 4 months.
What?
It was really...
That was terrible.
It's
of
the
her.
whole like falling off the bike. You're supposed to get right back on, right? It was really counterproductive. But I mean, it was forever. And then I was going through the thing with my family, which was, it was very painful for my mom to let one of her kids leave, right?
And be
far away. Own. So, I mean, I remember my aunt saying, well, you're not going to let her go take this job. And she was like, I don't think I can, And she said, they all drove me out there. She said she cried the entire way back from Texas to California. So I wanted to tell them, don't worry, this is a good thing. I'm doing great, but I was doing terribly. So I was like bursting into tears when I would put the key in the door and open that apartment door and burst into tears every single day for months.
My God.
And I was grounded from live reporting. I was the worst that the market had ever seen. I mean, on and on and on. I was broke. I think I made $11,000.
Oh my God.
I mean, it was a lot of things all at once. And so I just remember I would call them and I'd be like, no, it's great. They said I'm doing a really good job.
So how did you move forward? What was it that you said, is it sticking into it and say, I'm
not going to let this defeat me,
awesome.
And then it's the kindness, having somebody be kind. So there was a woman who became a friend of mine. She was an anchor at the time, the weekend anchor. And so it was finally time for me to report. And I remember this was like reporting from the fair. So she actually took the time to say, okay, let's practice. Let's practice. What are you going to do if something goes wrong? Your video is supposed to run and you're waiting and it doesn't run. What are you going to do? And I go, okay, we're having technical difficulty. We kind of like role played this a couple of times.
It was at the fair, so it was probably a light story.
Looser, easier. But just the concept of somebody walking me through this, it was so simple. And then I go, okay. And then that was it. And everything changed. And then at my 1 year mark, I became the morning and midday anchor. I spent exactly 2 years there. And that was at the time market 125. And then I got hired by the station here in town to be our bureau reporter in Flagstaff. It was a top 20 market. So, and it was like exactly 2 years to the day that I left. So everything caught up fast, but I certainly had strong thoughts about quitting at that time and figuring something else out.
And how important it is for just one person, right?
To
take that time and be the hero that till this day, you remember how important it was having her there, believed in you and helping you through it.
Yeah, and supporting you. And you're in these places many times, you're supposed to be, it's a training ground. And you're not pretending that you've been doing this for years. Everybody knows you're learning something new. And regardless of whatever place you are in your life, maybe, you're changing careers later in life, or maybe you're, just trying something new, the graciousness of somebody saying, hey, you're new to this. I've got a little more experience. I'm here if you need something, or actually suggesting, why don't we, practice or prep you a little bit so that you feel prepared and confident, is a life changer. So, that's like a moment that really sticks to me. And I hope that, over the years I've been able to do that for other people.
So journalism, what do you think, what has taught you about people?
Oh my goodness.
Besides coworkers or managers at the time in Texas.
People, it can be an emotionally draining career for sure, because you are, especially when you're reporting and you're meeting people oftentimes, sometimes in the greatest moments of their lives, oftentimes in the worst moments of their lives. Yeah. And so there's a sensitivity that you have to develop, but then there's also sort of a little shell that you have to develop as
Detached
well. Because it can really get to be emotionally very, very draining, very difficult. Sometimes stories will hit you at a time in your life where it's more of a raw nerve. And so it's hard sometimes to separate that, because you don't want to dismiss your humanity. To be a good storyteller, to be a good interviewer, you have to care about people, and they have to know that you care about them. But at the same time, you kind of have to compartmentalize, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, there were times in my life, even as a news anchor, I remember we were going through a lot of years of fertility treatments and trying to get pregnant. And I had finally gotten pregnant. I had a miscarriage, and I was back at work. And there was a series of stories about a child that had been thrown away found in a dumpster.
Oh my God.
And so it was this real, I was just coming back from this experience and really not understanding what our next steps were going to be personally. And then you're just, confronted with what can be so unfair in the world and so tragic in every single level. And so it's just it's a mirror to your own emotions. Mm-hmm. But you learn how to connect with people, and you learn how to, I think, have empathy and see things from different people's perspectives. And you certainly learn a lot, especially over the years as an anchor. We get a lot of feedback from viewers, and we learn a lot about how everybody has an opinion about everything, which is fair and, is theirs.
But could be draining.
And exactly, it can be draining. And you also really have to learn that you can't let everybody's opinion dictate how you feel about the work that you're doing, or how you feel about yourself, even in a bigger way. I mean, the girls and I, especially the team on Good Morning Arizona, would collect these wildly cruel emails about, and it's always about outfits or hair or weight or, things. It's that people are compelled to sit and type something up, because she really needs to know that dress looks like absolute crap, or looks like a raincoat or whatever. Shower curtain was one. But it's just, it's insight into how people are, how there are so many different types of people out there. You can never please everybody. The best thing you can do is know that you're always doing your best, professionally, personally, to be of good character, to tell the truth, to be direct and honest. And, you got to learn to shake off a lot of criticism, which is really useful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's other aspect, certainly in my case, mm-hmm. grew up in Arizona, but then when you came in mm-hmm. on TV, mm-hmm. I saw somebody that looked like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And how important it is. And I never got a chance to write you anything mm-hmm. nicely to say. Mm-hmm. But I do want to say that makes a huge difference.
So important.
In all the markets that you've been, mm-hmm. right? And seeing somebody, the leading anchor and that person looks like me. Whether I want to pursue communications or journalism is the fact that my daughter can see that that is possible, that is attainable, and that we have.
So important. And that's got to be one of the most rewarding parts of my career for sure is, I mean, we know that representation matters. I mean, we know, and things have changed so much. I mean, when I was a kid, I couldn't even get a Barbie that looked like me. I bought a Brooke Shields one, and that was like that and the Hawaiian Barbie. You know, now it's just, now people understand how important representation is and how we need to, our kids need to see themselves and in all the ways, in their lifestyles and in everything. And so to have families come up to me over the years at events and stuff, in particular in Latinos and even in the Native American communities.
Yes.
I mean, just to really, it meant something. And especially, you know, for the duration of time. And it really, the more that we can normalize that every opportunity is open to us, the better. And so that goes for, you know, every kind of career, every business. It would be very, very meaningful to me when I would, you know, hear these things and, you know, meet families that they were happy to see.
Absolutely.
Themselves.
And so we see one face of you on TV, and then we start seeing of you combining your passion for reading. How did that came about? And for those that may not know, that you are, you know, an avid reader.
As you are as well.
I love joining you on your book club. It was really awesome experience.
Our favorite book club conversations are when somebody doesn't like it. People really, a girlfriend of mine was, she's starting her neighborhood book club, and we were talking about some recommendations, and, you know, she felt really a lot of responsibility to pick something everybody's going to like. And I'm like, the best talks are when somebody hates it. So, you know, don't worry about it. Like, you didn't write it. It's fun to talk about, you know, that's when you realize, wow, we all have different opinions, you know.
You
like,
see things differently for sure. I was like, I didn't know. That makes sense. And then somebody could see it so different.
Or if you dislike a book and then you hear somebody talk about why they enjoyed it or what stood out.
How much you learn about
completely.
Yes,
you go like, okay, I kind of hated it. Now I kind of just was like, meh, you know, it changed. You warm up to it when you get other people's perspectives. But it was, I have to give credit to, she was at the time our assistant news director at the station. I posted a video talking about a book that I had really loved. And I just have always been a reader. Always loved to read. And I've always, you know, I would love to write. My brother's a writer, and, you know, my sister-in-law is a writer, and but it's just books have always been a huge part of my life. And so I had shared a video, and she said, "Why don't we do this as something through the station, and kind of, you know, you can connect with our viewers in a different way, and it'll be, you know, kind of a hybrid of, at the time, I think we were doing everything in person. This was pre-COVID, but it was an exciting opportunity to do something different and to get to communicate with people in another way about something that I really enjoy. And I felt like, you know, occasionally somebody would say, I'm so glad I picked up reading again. I'm glad that I participated in this, or, you know, whether they were participating or not, that the recommendations were making them interested again. And it was really, Oprah had a book club, but I want to say it was maybe it was like Reese Witherspoon only. It was still, everybody didn't have a book club at this time. This was 2019.
Yeah, certainly no one locally that I know.
Yes. So it's been a great opportunity, and it's led me to have, you know, some friendships through this group that I would not have had otherwise. And also to get a chance to do some really cool events over the years with the bookstores. So, I mean, I did an event with Stacey Abrams not long ago for Changing Hands. And I was like sitting in the back with her, and we're talking, and, you know, I was telling her I was getting ready to leave the station and talking about, you know, the things that I was thinking about doing, and had this really cool conversation with her. And, you know, she's a multi hyphenate. And she was like, you know, if people don't get that you want to do all of these things, who cares? You know, you get it. And actually everything that you're interested in sort of makes sense. It feeds each other. And, you know, this is a time in the world where people are expanding and learning that they can kind of design their own life. And so she was like it was just a really cool conversation at a moment that I was like prepping for change. And I felt like, well, if Stacey Abrams thinks this is a good idea, it's good, you know? So, but all of that was, you know, through the book club and through through getting to know people in that way and being able to share that stuff. So it's been really a cool experience.
It's certainly that sense of community during 2020, especially, was so important because there were very few opportunities that we had that year to be able to really connect with people in a more meaningful way, for sure. But take us back to that moment after so many years, right? Once you were a journalist, you feel there is nothing else at one point that you can ever do because it's like a passion that you felt is going to be for life.
Yes.
But then it comes a point, and for you, where was this moment from all these years of being on this comfort zone? I mean, the top-rated morning news show, and then the leading anchor for AC Family, and then you decide 6 months ago to leave. How did that happen?
I think it's a moment of insanity, I guess, or a gross irresponsibility, maybe. I had been thinking about it. You know, I mean, the number one thing is I absolutely loved the job. And I loved the people I worked with, and we had like a magical experience. We had fun. And I actually really wanted to sort of preserve that and kind of always had hoped that I would step away from it while I still loved it. And that while I still would be able to carry with me an attitude of, what's the next awesome thing? You know what I mean? And one of the things I think that has always scared me the most about the business was seeing people let go. And, you know, it's a big deal when somebody's hired. And then in general, it's like, wait, where did so-and-so go? You know, and then it's like, okay, don't speak of them again. And, you know, it's like, it's very, I've seen so many people be in a circumstance where all of a sudden, at no fault of their own, you know, they're not the ones anymore. Or they're, you know, the new boss that's not, you know, it's a very subjective business. And so I think that is a terrible way to wrap up a rewarding career that you really consider to be, you know, in service of the community. And I just kind of wanted to feel in control of my own destiny. And so maybe it was like some like deep-seated paranoia that eventually like my, you know, my ticket was going to be pulled. And I just wanted to be able to choose it my own way. And, you know, the dynamics, even when my friend Javier moved to ABC 15, you know, when somebody leaves, the dynamics change so much. And I remember, for whatever reason, that upset me so deeply. And my husband was like, I'm so mad at you, Javier, you made my wife cry. And I go, because we had, our little group was just, it was so clicked, all of us. And so it's a, you know, any kind of change, you kind of grieve, this moment that you know, it takes some time stepping away and go, that was like the prime time. That was, things were so special. Right. And so it just kind of made me think, okay, like change is inevitable. And how do I want this next phase to go? And, you know, these are contracts that usually are, you know, 2-3 years at a time. So you're kind of making these decisions for your own future. And the older you get and the longer you've been waking up at 3:00 in the morning, and, you know, the more that, oh gosh, another 3 years of doing the same thing. I really enjoy the show. I still really enjoy it, but it is still the same thing. And so if I keep doing the same thing another 10 years, I'm going to feel like probably too afraid or too old or too set in my ways to explore a new thing. And I guess that's really kind of what it came down to, is I wanted to feel like I could have a little more freedom and a little more say over the way that my life was playing out. The grind of the hours is really a thing. Yeah,
absolutely. You need to go to sleep early or you pay for it in the morning.
Yeah, and I paid for it every single morning. I had no discipline. I was probably getting maybe 4 hours of sleep for the last like 5 years. Wow. And so it was a lot of little factors, and I wanted the opportunity to just kind of say, okay, this was amazing. But a career doesn't define you. I don't, you know, I'm a person with a lot of interests, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't let it become who I am. You know, it was what I did, not who I am. Exactly. And so I just kind of had a talk with my husband and promised to pay off every credit card debt that I had within the time period so that I wouldn't be like completely sabotaging my family and, just take this leap. And even if it didn't make sense to other people, our rationale was it doesn't have to. If it feels right, it feels right. And I just had a lot of like intuitive signs that it was the right time to make a change for myself. And I've always trusted, whenever I followed my gut, things have always worked out. And that's just the truth. And so there was just a guiding light of some sort telling me it was time to change something and to make this happen. And so, it's still pretty fresh out. I guess it'll get back to me in a year or something. I'll tell you if I was wrong, but
no, I mean, you can tell me right now that you were right. So it's because change is scary.
Change is so scary.
It takes somebody very courageous to say, I have a good thing, but I know I need something else.
I need something else. And it doesn't, you sound crazy, because you get to a job where it's like, oh gosh, this is the job you were working for. This is where you wanted to be. And, what's wrong? And nothing's wrong. It's like a season, right? And so I hope to have, many more extremely fulfilling experiences that hopefully will go, long chunks of years as well. And so I've got like a crazy cork board in my office at home, but I have this little card and it has a woman and she's carrying luggage and she kind of looks distraught. And it says, it's only change. Everything will be okay. And change is often thrust at us and we have to learn how to adapt to it. And sometimes we seek it out. And both times can be scary and challenging. Even if you brought it on yourself, you can have a lot of self-doubt of like, what was I thinking? So I've certainly had days where I was like, did I make a huge mistake? And then there's times when I'm like, oh, I know. I'm so glad that I listened to my intuition. So
tell us about this last 6 months. Yeah, I mean, you've been now in full control of your time, your destiny.
So before we started, I said one of the things that people don't understand about our business, about working in live TV and that show, I was on the set for 4 hours a day, is even asking permission to go to the restroom, right? Be like to the producer, do you think I have in a few minutes I could go pee, and it's a hilarious thing. You're like a kid in school.
Your hand.
It's just, and then you're running, you're in heels and you're running back and forth and running. And so it's been a really funny thing too. Then I kind of flipped over. I'm like a teenager staying up too late and, this and that. But it's been exciting and interesting and a little stressful and a little overwhelming and then easy and fun. I'm learning new things. I'm kind of giving myself the time to figure out, okay, what do I really want to be putting my full energy into? There was a masterclass that I watched with Elaine Welteroth, she was the editor of Teen Vogue, and she was on Project Runway, and she's a writer and speaker and all of this. And her class was basically becoming the architect of your own career. And, kind of Venn diagramming all of the things that light you up, the things that are exciting to you, the things that you have passion for, and that you don't have to follow the rules. You can create, buckets of I'm doing this and I'm doing this and, I'm going to carve out time for this and this and explore. And that by exploration is the only way that you really kind of find what feels completely authentic to yourself, right? And it's really hard to do that when you're, in the grind of just getting through, the basics of the day. So it's been fun. It's been interesting. I'm trying to leurn how, I've created my first business proposals and invoices and, things that I just have never done. I am working on another little business that is still can't talk about it, but
you'll be back to tell us.
I'll be back to talk about it. Okay, I hope so from your,
you will
registered for a trademark. I mean, I'm learning. I found a government program that's free. I got a business mentor and was Zooming with a gentleman, asking him these questions about an industry I have zero experience in. It's really cool. I really want to learn, take risks, have fun. My husband and I have this amazing opportunity as part of the ownership team for Tequila Corrido, and to be able to support that growth as well as we're, trying to expand. And I mean, we don't come from backgrounds where, anybody's handing you over some big estate or, I'm not inheriting any company, from to And so the idea of having an ownership stake in a business that has the potential to be, to grow to the possibilities that we're dreaming of and working towards is kind of unfathomable. And so it's just been an incredible opportunity. And so we're just excited about all kinds of things. And I really want to help other people, figure out how to find their own voice and be more confident as speakers. I mean, I know how stressful being interviewed can be. I mean, I would have, maybe 4 or 5 guests on the show a day. And, some people are just, it's no big deal. But most people get very nervous and, they have.
It's outside their comfort zone.
Completely. And they have great knowledge and they deserve to be able to communicate as an expert. But it gets overwhelming, and
Absolutely.
Scary. So I want to really be able to help people with that. And, so like lots of things. Keep going with the book club and, all sorts of stuff. And we really want to travel a lot
I heard book club and I heard tequila. So I think that's a really good combination.
You can't go wrong, right?
Especially it's from Jalisco, as it should be.
Of course, yes.
Tequila Corrido is from Jalisco. My brother-in-law just left actually this morning to Jalisco for a family get together, and he goes, "Do you want me to bring you about?" Of course, I want you to bring me.
You're asking a silly question, yes.
But now we have Tequila Corrido here too. So.
Yes, additive free. And, it's a cool story. It's, recycled glass bottles. The master distiller is a woman. She is really somebody who is like trained everybody. And she is so well respected and really a pioneer in the field and is so meticulous about the process. And so it's like, part science, part art. And, it's an exciting time to just try to,
explore,
and, right?
And create new paths for you. So before we do go, any advice on as you see in switching careers that you would like to give to our audience, and like what are any special learning opportunities or nuggets of information that you want to share about?
I mean, I would say that letting go of what can be paralyzing fear of change is really important. I mean, that is the key to unlock what is meant to come your way. I mean, remember how we were dating? It was like when you really wanted to meet somebody, that's when you never met somebody, right? You're like, I really want a boyfriend. Like, now's the time I'm over. You're never going to meet anybody. It's when you move on and you're like your life is busy. I don't even care about that because I'm doing all of these other things. And I'm so jazzed up about hanging with my friends or my work or, a trip or whatever. That's when people come into your life. So I just really believe that, the energy shift of being open to opportunity. And it doesn't necessarily even mean stepping away from your job because you got to pay the bills, right? But being open to opportunity, letting people know, I'm curious about this, or I'm not done yet, right?
I'm not done yet.
This story is still being written. And so I think when you just kind of put that out there, things come your way and people will give you ideas, or they may lead you in a direction that you wouldn't have gone on your own. And that may be the right way. So I just think it's, if you need to feel like you've revitalized yourself in some way, sometimes you got to rip that Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Make a plan, do it responsibly. And, but change will come your way at all parts of our lives, whether we like it or not. It'll be good change. It'll be bad change. The better prepared we are to learn how to kind of roll through it and navigate it, regardless of the fact that we don't know how it's going to turn out, is, so important. It's very empowering. I mean, that's a superpower, right?
Absolutely.
It gives you the courage to face new things, and there could be something great on the other side.
There's always something great on the other side.
Hopefully. Is there?
It's a pleasure having you.
I love seeing you.
It's always
Thank you.
great energy with you and Javier, and it's always been amazing. And you in our events, sharing. Anytime, please come back. We'd love to hear what's next for you.
Yes, thank you.
And to continue to be around you, to learn, and then to support each other.
And the programs that are, coming out of CPLC are so important. And the people that I've met have all been so extraordinary. And it's just a really important organization. So thank you for all of the work that you guys are doing. And thanks for thinking of me.
Thank you. Well, this is it for our second episode in 2024. And we're excited of what's coming up next on this new season. We'll hope to see you next time on Thursday at 2:00.